You have been born at this time for a sacred and glorious purpose. It is not by chance that you have been reserved to come to earth in this last dispensation of the fullness of times. Your birth at this particular time has been foreordained in the eternities. You are to be the royal army of the Lord in the last days. You are youth of a noble birthright.
My dear brothers and sisters, as we commence another great General Conference of the Church, my heart is full. It is full of love and gratitude to the Latter-day Saints throughout the world. During the past 6 months, I have been deeply touched by the response of members of the church who have heeded counsel to read and reread the word of the Lord as set forth in the book of Doctrine and Covenants. This has resulted in increased spirituality and is helping to cleanse the inner vessel. Adults, youth, and children have borne powerful testimonies as to how the Book of Mormon has changed their lives. My life, too, continues to be changed by this sacred volume of Scripture. Recently, I have been reading again the marvelous account of the Book of Mormon, of the visit of the resurrected Savior to the American continent. As Easter approaches, I have been deeply impressed with the beauty and power of this scriptural account in 3rd Nephi, and with a great value for our time and generation. The record of the Nephite history just prior to the Savior's visit reveals many parallels to our own day as we anticipate the Savior's second coming.
I have faith that the Constitution will not be saved in Washington.
Travis Wayne Goodsell. So, 2nd of January, which means that both Christmas and New Year's came and went. Still no nuclear attack. And in case you're brand new and you've not been following, David Hughes Horn, back in 1989, wrote out what President George Albert Smith had told his ward way back in October 1947, and wrote that President Smith indicated that a nuclear attack on America would take place on a holiday after the new president was elected, but before he took office. And so didn't happen for Christmas, didn't happen for New Year's. But there's still a holiday that has not finished. It is Hanukkah, which included both Christmas and New Year's. Today, last day, by now, or you'll miss out. And so, if it happens, and you're all dead, and no more views for me. Sucks to be you guys. It would have been nice to have living prophet of Jesus warn us in advance of the coming day and hour of the prophesied prediction to save Mormons. You know, Amos 3:7. Surely the Lord God will do nothing, save he shall revealeth his secrets unto his servants the prophets. And so, even though that's mistranslated, we still correctly understand it, that it requires a warning voice, specific, not general, so that the people can be prepared in advance and make necessary preparations and precautions for defense or whatever the threat would be. And so, unfortunately, the living prophets of Jesus have lulled Mormons into a carnal sense of security that all is well in Zion. Don't blame me, blame the prophets. I'm not the one who's lulling you into a carnal sense of security. I'm calling you wicked. And so these dates of when a prediction of the future is supposed to happen requires a calendar system, and the scriptures utilize astronomy for the designation of dates. And you have to understand that during the Roman period time, there were at least a couple of calendars in use at the time. One was a 10-month calendar, and another one was a lunar calendar, and there was likely a civil calendar. So there are multiple calendars in use. And even the Egyptians may still have been using a Celtic calendar. The Mayans had their different calendars. Over in the Americas, the Lamanites and the Nephites. Literal history true, so says the first creed of Christianity, which Joseph Smith called all wrong, abominable, and corrupt. And yet Mormons still do what to the Book of Mormon? There's a thing called study and research. And so when you're studying Jewish authored scriptures, you don't use Christian interpretation on them. You have to know what the first creed of Christianity is and what changes it made. Otherwise, you get conned. You get led astray and deceived. Worshipping a false idol god, following false prophets, whom you didn't even use the Bible, let alone the Book of Mormon, if you're Mormon, to test for a false prophet. And a false prophet, if it doesn't come to pass, meaning he gives you a date too. Because if he doesn't give you a date, he just tells you, you're going to die. Yeah, we're all going to die. So what? Kind of needs to give you a date in order to be a legitimate prophet. And he has to be tested, and he has to be confirmed as true. Meaning the prediction came to pass on the date he gives for the prediction of the future. Kind of essential. They go together. Just like interpreting or speaking in tongues and interpretation of tongues. You don't want to have, hypothetically Brigham Young being a speaker of tongues, as Brigham Babble Young. See that video of mine? And nobody can interpret them. But Joseph Smith says it's of Jesus. False. Yeah, no wonder the church doesn't promote that. Except on Wikipedia. Hilarious. You know a false prophet when he does something stupid. And so, giving of the dates, when it's a Jewish author, not only requires you to recognize the astronomy movements, the celestial bodies as they move over our head through the different constellations. You need to know that they were anthropomorphized into animals and humans, and thus the scriptures are often telling stories based upon that anthropomorphizing of the heavens. They don't actually believe that they're real animals and people in outer space like astrotheologists believe. It's sad. not going to go into the Mormon woman who's having difficulty with a divorce and goes off the deep end. You know, like Chad Daybell, Lori Vallow. Mormons. Anyway, she is in the past. I saw that you do videos about astronomy, and so I thought you might be interested in astrotheology. No. 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 Stop it. The Jews are not witches. This was a Christian thing. And the first creed of Christianity was the consequence. That's why Christians blamed the Jews for murdering not real Jesus, or as you don't know it, homuzion, the Greek word that isn't a Greek word. Constantine just made it up by combining Greek letters together and said, there's the nature and character of this new created Jesus that we named and designated for your God now. Not real. And over 4 billion people on the earth today still believe in this not real deity, the Great Spirit. Hey, the Book of Mormon talks about the Great Spirit. Lamanites believed in the Great Spirit. Zoramites believed in the Great Spirit. I'm seeing a pattern. What did Joseph Smith say again about Christianity? All wrong, abominable, and corrupt. And so you kind of need to know your calendar for the Jews if you're going to study Jewish scriptures, and the learning of the Jews, the interpretation of the Jews, the religion of the Jews, the Christ of the Jews. Give you a hint, not Jesus. And so, I've told you before when I saw Alma 16 doing a day first then month designation, and showed how it compares with the books of the Torah. Each author has a unique linguistic pattern, and I found the pattern also involves their designation of days and months, whether month first or day first. And so the book of Genesis is month first, Exodus is day first, Leviticus is month first, Numbers is day first, it's just rotating, and Deuteronomy, the law of the Jews, is month first. The law, where they tell all Jews that their Christ is a man like Moses. And thus the Exodus author, who did day first, tells his prophecy and revelation of a future date for their Christ. Remember? You can't say no man knows the day or the hour for your Christ. Kind of automatically false. And so, yes, the Jews give the date of when he comes. They give the day and the hour. Thus, we now know it was a Christian who went into Matthew's Jewish author's book and put in that all wrong, abominable, and corrupt, no man knows the day or the hour, among some other abominations, like the name of Emmanuel. Dear God. Did you ever check Isaiah? Well, we don't know it's Isaiah. It doesn't say Isaiah. We don't want to speculate. We don't want to get involved in deep doctrine. Check the Book of Mormon now. Is it in the Book of Mormon? God with us? Is it? No? It's plagiarizing Isaiah, not Matthew. Weird. So what makes you think the Christians are true? Already established they're false by running the Bible test from Matthew. That by their fruits you shall know a false prophet, which came from the law of the Jews, Revelation 19, as well as Revelation 18, verse 20, for the prophesied and thus revealed coming of the false prophet. Thus, the Exodus author does a man like Moses with the false prophet Pharaoh, who says, I will not let Mormons go. Yeah, Joseph Smith says we're Jewish and that our Christ is a Mormon who's going to go before Pharaoh's court and say, let my people go. And Pharaoh will say, no. It happened. The prophecy fulfilled and the day and the hour of when it was to occur. Kind of late to the show. Apparently there's only one who was pre-2020. I think Frederick, if he's still alive, he was 2021, weren't you? But nevertheless, and notwithstanding. And so, do the scripture first. We have our Book of Mormon. Verse 2 says, learning of the Jews. And so it has nothing to do whatsoever with another testament of Jesus Christ. Thus we know by the fruits, because we've already run the test for the word of Christianity as false, that Spencer W. Kimball, by putting it as the subtitle, is a false prophet. See how simple this is? This is not complicated. No need to get upset with me. You should be getting upset with Spencer W. Kimball for leading you astray. He lied and deceived you. See, we're at season 2 of Handmaid's Tale. Still traumatized, scarred for life. Not as much as the scarring from my childhood white supremacist Christian nationalist peers who are about to overthrow America. But the psychological abuse is more prevalent in the episode that I just watched last night, where she had an opportunity to escape, but at one of the designated transfer points, the particular driver got a notification that their cover was blown, and he had to flee, and told her to stay where she was and wait for further instructions. She didn't want to do that. She thought she knew better. And she insisted on going with him, and she got caught. And he got murdered, and his wife was also made a handmaid, and their child was kidnapped and put into the indoctrination camp. Just, God. And so now she keeps repeating the brainwashing. That is Psychology 101. Bully somebody and abuse them repeatedly, over and over again, name calling them, You are mentally retarded. 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 If you are in denial that you are mentally retarded, it's because you're mentally retarded. You are mentally retarded. You are mentally retarded. Until you finally accept that you're mentally retarded. And then they drug you, and then you're in bondage to them for the rest of your life as you are slowly being murdered. Your lifespan is being cut short with the pharmaceutical drugs of Big Pharma, using psychology as the guinea pig facilitators. So, yeah, Family Services, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But this all has to do with the prophecy of the great and abominable church in the latter days, using the same abomination of desolation that the Greeks did to the Jerusalem temple, destroying the altar and putting their rituals on their altar in the Jerusalem temple, and the beginning of paying for sex in the temple with female prostitutes. Rome would go on to add male prostitution in the temples. And so thus you can use those historical facts of origin to identify the time period of when the particular Jewish scriptures were written, whether it was right in if it really was in the Greek period of time, or if it was Roman, then yeah, all Roman. Genesis author specifically, it wasn't 4000 BCE when it was written. In the beginning, Amuzion Jesus created nothing out of nothing. I got a Big Bang because of that abomination. Although the Big Bang theory was okay, it got a little boring as I was getting into, what was it, season 8, I think, as they started to get into relationships. But young Sheldon, oh, genius, just hilarious. Love that show. Anyway, so we're focusing on calendars for this video, as my associative memory takes us on tangent lane. So the first indication of a date is in verse 4. For it came to pass in the commencement of the first year of the reign of Zedekiah, king of Judah. So we're already told in verse 2 that this is not literal history, because it's the first creed of Christianity that designated Jewish scriptures as literal histories. And so the Book of Mormon is not literal history. The Book of Mormon itself tells us it's not. Joseph Smith, to make sure you understood that the Book of Mormon is not literal history, put in his introduction to the Book of Mormon that it was written in the spirit of prophecy and revelation, not literal history. And so the stories about the Lamanites and the Nephites and the Jaredites are not real. Don't get mad at me. You're the one who was deceived by false prophets. You didn't run the test, and so you have yourself to blame. But Zedekiah is a literal history person. And he was put on the throne of Jerusalem by his brother Nebuchadnezzar in 597 BCE. Not 600, Bruce. Because there's a 600 years from the time Lehi left Jerusalem. Remember, it's not literal history. Lehi's not real. He's telling you a specific date for the Exodus year. So you gotta know your astronomy. You gotta know the date of 597 for the first year of Zedekiah. The one and only one thing that William Foxwell Albright guessed right. Paleo-Hebrew, my ass. Dear God, what a joke. He does a little pamphlet and he becomes the authority on it. I go into it and go, oh my hell, everything is wrong. Not a single thing is correct. How did he become a scholar? Did he have a PhD? What the hell? Was he knighted like Sir Alan Gardner and his abomination? For Egyptian sign lists? Dear God. You know, it takes a translator to be judged by his works. And by their fruits you shall know a false translator. Sure indeed. Okay, and so they're talking about the warning of the destruction of Jerusalem, which on the 10th of this month is the memorial day of when Nebuchadnezzar II came in the 9th year of Zedekiah, 588 BCE, and began the siege that would take a couple of years before 9th Av, when Jerusalem would be destroyed. Notice 9th Av is the Jewish calendar month. Kind of important to know the Jewish calendar. And thus it was 9/11 in the Jewish calendar. The Jews were the victims of the first 9/11 attack. And when Rome destroyed the temple, 9/11 again. And so those Illuminati people seem to love 9/11 to do attacks. As on 9/11, 1826, William Morgan was attacked and thrown into prison and jail under false pretenses to threaten him not to continue writing the Book of Mormon. Then, 9/11, 1857, Senator Mike Lee's third great grandfather murdered women and children because Brigham Young had set up his kingdom and America took it away, and so he was forcing Mormons to make sure no other American gets past their line of Mormondom. So, another story for another day. We're talking about calendars. And of course there's 9/11, and people were distracted with other 9/11s by Poppy Bush, and so on and so forth. So, we then have to go down to verse 8, because we need to find out what is the prophetic first year of Zedekiah and what the date actually is, because this is not literal history. They're specifically using a historical event for the story for the latter day prophecy and revelation. And so in verse 8, Lehi has his second vision. His first vision is a pillar of fire that dwelt upon a burning bush. Nope, it's a rock this time. Again, all Jewish authors have to conform and comply to the law of the Jews. Deuteronomy 18, verse 15 says, all Jewish hero characters of the Jewish Christ must be a man like Moses. So Moses, in his story with the Exodus, has him beginning his ministry at the top of the mountain. Remember, Joseph Smith said Mormons are Jewish, and thus the Mormon Christ is after the manner of the man like Moses. Hey, Joseph Smith has two visions. Yeah, section 107, verse 91. Ta-da. All you had to do was study, but yeah, I understand. Church didn't footnote it. So it can't be true. And so Lehi instead has his start of the ministry with a pillar of fire on a rock. There's some other stuff I could talk about for Egyptian, because they already said language of the Egyptians. Rock, Peter, seer. Catholics botched that one. And so thus vision. So in verse 8, sure enough, he was carried away in a vision as he's on his bed. Joseph Smith's second vision, at his bed. White shirt messenger, who's the sun god at noonday, appears. I didn't plan, this just happened because of the laundry schedule. But yet again, I do it again. And you did hear the videos when I told you that getting this apartment on the day of the apartment was from a dream I had way back in 2014. 14 or 15. December, I think it was. In which I was moving, and the Elders Quorum president from the downtown ward that I was in at the time helped me move my boxes, and we moved them to in the hallway at the door of the first apartment. And then I'm told in the dream that it's the wrong apartment, that it's another apartment at the other end of the hall by the elevators. And so trying to get people to help me move to that one was difficult. I had to do it myself. But yeah, and so the room number was 2002, I think it was. And yeah, and so it was day first and then month in the dream interpretation, because February 20th was the moving date for both apartments, but both apartments I wasn't able to move in on the 20th because of the holidays for both in February. And so it ended up being on the 21st in both situations. And, well, actually the 23rd in both situations, because the Monday on that in 2015, and then Tuesday for this one, but the actual payment of the building was completed on the 23rd, similar to the 23rd. Weird, but yeah. After it happened that way, I'm going, yeah, my associated memory reminded me of the dream. Very weird indeed. So, another tangent lane. And so his vision, he is given the astronomy date from Revelation chapter 12, verses 1, 2, and 5. How do we know 5 needs to go with 1 and 2 in Revelation? Verse 8 is verse 5, God sitting upon his throne. We can confirm this from 2 other sources. Joseph Smith translation moves verse 5 in Revelation chapter 12 to verse 3. And sure enough, this is the last day for Revelation chapter 12 verse 3 getting merged with 4 as 4 in the Joseph Smith translation. This is the last day for that. What happened 7 years ago, Mormons? Anybody remember? Yeah, Monson died this evening at 10:01 p.m. I'm paying very close attention. At George Albert Smith versus Joseph Smith. But, yeah, it's weird. We'll see what happens. But nonetheless, Isaiah also is the other confirmation. This is where the author of Revelation got it from. Is Isaiah chapter 6, verse 1. God on his throne. And then 7:14 for the main one of the specific date, Virgo being impregnated with Jupiter, and 3 other visible planets added to Leo's 9 designation of stars to make 12. And then God sitting on his throne is Saturn in Ophiuchus. And so we know the date, 23rd of September 2017. The first year of the reign of King Zedekiah is now 2017. You see how that worked? You got to know your astronomy to know the dates of Isaiah, Revelation, and the Book of Mormon. Made it very specific in Revelation. The first year of the Book of Mormon is 2017. Now the question is it the Jewish civil or religious calendar? The religious New Year is the 1st of Nisan. And I always forget the civil one. Tishri. Tishri is the first month of the civil calendar, the new year. And so I've told you about how it's important to know that Joseph Smith, writing in the Learning of the Jews with his visionary accounts, it's important to know the date that he had those visions, not when he gives them. And so the second vision is kind of important because it matches Lehi's second vision as well for the latter days. So thus, Joseph Smith, Urim and Thummim, is the designation of the sign in the heavens that Lehi gives, and Revelation gives, that Isaiah gives. And so Joseph Smith is talking about Nephi, not Moroni. Don't listen to this church. You know they're lying to you. You can't trust them for anything. They are false prophets. So, Nephi, trust Joseph. He knows what he's talking about. That's his new name, by the way. Who's described as the sun god at noonday, the Jewish Christ. Comes to Joseph Smith at his bedside, wearing white. Is the man like Moses, is a seer, is a prophet, is a revelator, and is a translator of Paleo, Hebrew, and Egyptian. You will know him by his fruits, so that you will not be deceived. Don't get mad at me. for you being deceived by false prophets. And gives him a Book of Mormon. Lehi is given a book talking about the destruction. Sure enough, Joseph Smith gets a book talking about destruction. This destruction in the Book of Mormon is on 9th Ave when literal history occurred. Joseph Smith has September 22nd. 2 sets, 4 times. Right, Nelson? For the bicentennial year last year? Hilarious. How art thou fallen, O Russell Marion, son of the morning? Joseph Smith rules. Nelson drools. And don't get mad at me. It was Joseph. He got it. Nailed it. Exposed the false prophet for Mormons, who didn't even bother to mention anything about the second vision all last year. Just me. Okay? But, even though 9/11 has already happened, we're still waiting for, or trying to figure out, is this the civil or the religious calendar is what we're trying to do here, before I forget. It's on the paper, just in case I forget. And so, we need to find out where on earth this is taking place. And since, obviously, it's a Mormon who is your Christ, it would be in the United States of America. And so it's a president of the United States who represents Zedekiah. Trump was the one who took office on January 20th, 2017. Trump was elected president with the November election previous in 2016. 2016 is also the conception month, November, for the coming of the Christ, in accordance with Jupiter retrograding for a pregnancy period in Virgo. And so, November is in the civil New Year. Okay? And so the civil New Year ended just barely before 23rd September 2017, which means that the religious calendar is the one being used in 1st Nephi, because the same year, 2017, is when, and so he's using our calendar because it's a contemporary person, Joseph Smith Sr., who had to rewrite the 116 pages. And so he's mixing all 3 calendars, because the civil calendar put Trump on the throne, and brilliant, he knew about Russia being involved. Russia wasn't even a nation yet until 1919, with the Scottish Rites Illuminati seal of the 2 eagles. And then you have the Mormon Christ, who's symbolically being conceived and is in the womb during the civil calendar time period. But then in 1st Nisan, you then have, we should check. We should check. Where are you? Calendars, where are the calendars? I really need to get these organized. Joseph Smith calendars. Hebrew calendars, there we go. Okay, 14, 15, 16, 17. I was walking through the park one day in the merry, merry month of May. Yep, 28th of March. And yeah. Okay, 28th of March was when the religious calendar New Year began in 2017. And in the religious calendar, as the civil calendar already had the president put on the throne, you then have the first day of darkness that begins in the first year. You also have the 23rd of September 2017 prophecy, the start of the ministry, which Lehi has the start of his ministry. And then you have other revelation dates also, and then Monson also is in the religious calendar, being January 2nd. Okay? So we can probably even check 2018's February, no, 17th, oh, the Christ birthday. Interesting. Very interesting. Interesting. So yeah, I have a lot of projects that I have to do and 3 months to do it in. Nobody helping. Where's my helpmate? Okay, so you see how the author is using both the civil and the religious calendar as well as our calendar. Because if you use our calendar, you can still understand. But you're supposed to use the learning of the Jews. So he's going all out. This senior was just a brilliant mind. Just amazes me. Okay. And so when we get to 2024 and 2025, this is where we go to 3rd Nephi chapter 7, because it's switched. And it's really cool. So 3rd Nephi chapter 7 starts us off with the civil calendar again for an election. They did not establish a king over the land, but in the same year, and then they give you Illuminati ranking for the year, or Scottish Rites ranking for the year. They did destroy the judgment seat and murder the chief judge. And so in order for Trump, notice how the king was in 2017. Now a king who's seeking to overthrow the government, whose name is now Jacob, usurper, is being used here in an election. and he wins the election, but he doesn't get established as king. And so his people end up designating him as king, regardless of the United States of the Nephites being destroyed. The federal government is destroyed by the secret combination of the great and abominable church. And they are divided into nation states, which they call tribes. But if you knew anything about the literal history, tribes, each tribal unit had a city. And they didn't have United States for the land. It was all within the land. So each city was its own land under those designations. And so, yes, the lands were divided. And you can see it as capitals of the land. And so every capital of the United States goes their own way and becomes their own independent nation. This is the plot and purpose and mission of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, to get their kingdom back. This is their plot. And so again, you see the civil calendar for 2024, as Trump was already designated as the king here. We already know this. But the religion began on the 1st of Nisan in the calendar. Which was, because it was a leap year, the 9th of April began the new religious calendar year. And on the 8th of April, 2024, was the third and final day and hour of darkness over the United States of America, forming the Paleo-Hebrew letter A on its side. Greeks turned it up. Brilliant. The Jews were brilliant with the creation of Paleo-Hebrew, because the last letter of Paleo-Hebrew is the X, or Chi in Greek. And so when you see Alpha and Omega, that's the Koine Greek, not Paleo-Greek. Thus a designation of when the author was writing it. But also, it's supposed to be Paleo-Hebrew, Paleo-Hebrew script. Thus Alpha and Tau, Babylonian Semitic Hebrew pronunciation. But Greek, Alpha and Chi. And the final day of darkness on 8 April, the last day of the year of the religious calendar, brilliant. And this was known to the Egyptians, by the way. Brilliant. And so, yeah, I remember the Egyptian calendars that I finally got the final one for 2025. And so thus, the next day, started the new religious calendar year on the 9th of April, technically in the evening of the 8th. And so we are still in this religious calendar. The fall of the great and abominable church and the threat to the United States of America falling under King Trump is in play here still, because the election didn't happen until after the new year of the civil calendar. But it's still within the religious calendar. See, in 2017, the first day happened within the civil calendar and overlapped in the religious calendar. And so comedy ensued with prophecy, with visions and dreams that I had, going over them with you, and going over the holy days of the Jews, tabernacles, the Exodus, trying to get you to listen, trying to get you to be prepared, trying to put pressure on the church to let you go, and massive attacks by the church all last year. They would not let you go, let them go. And so now 25th, 2025. And so we go until the 30th of March. That is the end of the religious calendar. Civil calendar is still in play, but 3rd Nephi chapter 7 tells us that Trump will not become king on the 20th, which 18 more days away. And we were told that the church is going to destroy the federal government so that the states go sovereign. Thus Utah goes sovereign. And thus Cox. That's why the church wanted Cox in and not Lyman. Because Lyman would have delusions of grandeur, thinking he's gonna be king. Whereas Cox, yeah, he's compromised. He's a lapdog for the church. And so Cox will immediately hand it over to the church to run the Handmaid's Tale of Zion. But the Book of Mormon says Trump will not become president. And so something is going to happen. Tomorrow, Congress, well, they meet today. The debt ceiling was not raised, so things aren't getting paid for now. But tomorrow is their swearing-in day. And then January 6th is the memorial where Kamala Harris is supposed to certify Trump as the president. There's going to be an uproar on that. But whether or not there's going to be a Speaker of the House, that's going to be another issue. I'm not sure if they require a Speaker of the House. I don't think they did in 2020, did they? There was some debate over who was going to be Speaker then as well. Or did they have a Speaker on the 6th of January? I'd have to go back and check. But, yeah, we've got some stuff coming up for drama to pay attention to. We need to pay attention to the stock market today. It was falling before New Year's. Stock market is your indicator of a potential threat to the United States. There were 2 terrorist attacks yesterday in New Orleans and Trump Tower, Las Vegas, with an Elon Musk vehicle blowing up. But he assured us it was not the vehicle, it was explosives in the vehicle. Dear God. But those aren't mass casualty 9/11 terrorist attacks, though, that the church needs to have happened in order to shut down the federal government. That's what we're paying attention to. That's what we're watching for. Because the church already says they're going to do it. The video I did yesterday, this is why I do my research of church history, government history. I pay attention to Trump. I pay attention to Nelson. I pay attention. And with my associative memory, I'm able to tie everything together, just as you're supposed to do when you're doing research, running tests for confirmation. This is what forensic investigators do at a crime scene, so that they can find out who done it. And so it's sad that the federal government said there is no known terrorist threats for New Year's, but we're on high alert. I gave you it on a silver platter. So yes, it was made very clear the FBI is not going to go after the church. Seeing something, saying something means nothing to the people if those who you are supposed to see and say something to don't do their job. Right, Chief Brown? The new AG took office in Utah. Did you notify him that he himself too is guilty of co-conspiracy? You have a job and a duty to the United States over the church. Are you going to do it? I highly doubt it. And so yeah, this is going to be a tense month. And if 20th of January comes and Trump is put in, we're all doomed anyway. Because he's gonna destroy the federal government. But that's when he gets established as king. Already spiritually, Congress, the Supreme Court, said, yep, as long as you're president, you can do whatever you want. It won't be considered a crime, and all of his court cases have already been dismissed. He has to pay the one sexual assault victim. I don't think George Stephanopoulos works anymore. I think he's gone. You know, rape is sexual assault. And yes, under a general definition of rape, but you were talking about the legal case, and so you can't. Bye-bye, George. Bye-bye. So, yeah, it'll be very interesting. But sun shall be darkened, moon turned to blood, stars fall from heaven, for the curse of Joseph Smith is also in play in March. And so from February 13th to April 15th, we're on the alert for the curse of Joseph Smith to take effect. But if the Joseph Smith translation is throwing out the death of Nelson, as the death of Monson was at the beginning, then it would be Oakes who would be next in line for the sun shall be darkened, moon turned to blood, stars falling from heaven between 13th of February to the 15th of March. That's the curse of Joseph Smith. Sun shall be darkened, moon turned to blood, stars fall from heaven, death of a false prophet. Excuse me. And so also, 15th is of specific importance in my understanding of the dream that I have. Oh, it's the same days in the Jewish calendar. 2 15s. Oh. I was worried that after the House of Israel's tabernacles, that begins on the 15th, that would no longer apply? And I was struggling. How does the 15th apply then? Why was in the dream did Irene lay his hands on my head with the number 15 twice? Made no sense. Because at first I was thinking 2024's Passover and Jewish tabernacles, because those are both on the 15th also. And tabernacles came and went. And then I found out about the House of Israel's tabernacles, came and went. And now I'm seeing, I was thinking January 15th is the same as Tevet 15th, but there's no designation for that. But yeah, 15th of Adar and 15th of March, Purim, Esther, which is involved right now, until the 10th of Tevet. Fascinating. And then, of course, Passover. April 13th, technically the 12th, in the evening, the week after conference, assuming that Oaks is able to live long enough. Because that's the final designation, because the 15th is the lunar eclipse on Purim, lunar eclipse. And then on the 30th of March is the solar eclipse, on the first day of the new religious calendar year. See how the calendars of the Jews is playing a role in the latter days and the events of the latter days. So yes, very interesting. But it could mean that we're going to continue to go on. However, I'm very curious to see about Trump, whether he's going to get into office or whether something's going to happen and destroy the federal government. And if the federal government's destroyed, all hell's going to break loose in America. We're going to have literally wars in the streets, even in Utah. People are going to be concerned. How are we going to live? How are we going to, the elderly? They're supposed to be getting a big boost for their Social Security. Those who retired. They're supposed to get a whole backlog of a year's worth of boost along with the first designation of the new amount of money. But if all hell breaks loose and Trump doesn't get in, the federal government's destroyed, nobody's getting that money. How are they going to be taken care of? Utah hates people. They've been trying to murder us and chase us out of Utah for all different kinds of ways. And so, yes, this is going to be intense. And as I've warned, the fall has to happen. It's already happened for the government. Whether Trump gets in or not, the federal government has fallen. We're just waiting for it to officially fall. And the transfer has been made. Not to the Christ, but Biden to Trump. And the transfer technically is on the 20th, even though the certification is on January 6th. And Oaks told us that the church is in charge of all of this. We need to ask them what they are plotting. Sister Jessica leaked her mission president's letter, who leaked Oaks confessing that the church is cooing the government. That 2020 was just a test run. And so it'll be very curious and interesting as to what's going to happen. Handmaid's Tale says that Congress is going to be shot up. the White House blown up. I still have yet to find out what happened to SCOTUS, whether they were shot or blown up. Yet. So, dear God, but this is Christians. They are using Trump to get their kingdom back. Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is using Christians to use Trump to get their kingdom back. And so the religious side has to do with the fall of the great and abominable church, the transfer to me so that I can then put out the Section 133 call for the Exodus to get us to Zion. So it kind of pisses me off that Passover is after the 30th. As I'm already frustrated that we've got 3 more months. But do you see the danger we're all in? If the federal government falls this month, how are people going to survive and live? Because Utah doesn't want to take care of the elderly. They're hoarding the money for Jesus, just as the church is doing. They're wanting to transfer authority to the church to run things. And if the church runs things, they're going to run apostates out of the state of Utah. Just as Trump is threatening to chase out everybody from the United States of America. Do you see how it's the same pattern? If Nelson dies, transfer of authority goes to Oaks. Biden lost, transfer of authority goes to Trump. And the exodus for them as the enemies, Trump is going to have a mass deportation exodus, not a gathering to Zion. Nelson likewise, booting out all the undesirables, the apostates, the poor, blacks, Hispanics, because Cox already says we're going to help Trump kick people out of Utah. Bye-bye, Mia Love. You showed Trump no love. Gave Trump no love, technically. And so the establishment of Zion is Trump's MAGA nation for the church. Des Nat. This is what we're faced with for the enemy's plans. And so how are we going to flee if we don't get that transfer? Because we'd have to require natural resources to manufacture, mine, produce into the materials to build Zion with. Whereas if we're able to get the transfer of total assets of the church, we can then buy and build Zion. The Exodus story says that they are given the transfer of funds to go build Zion. So this is what I'm paying very close attention to. How is it going to play out? We know it's going to happen. Oaks said it was. But precisely how, we have yet to find out. So, alrighty. I have to turn that into a pretty picture for you and we'll proceed.